Hi everybody. So today I'm going to go for another one of these older rums that I reviewed way back in the day, and that's the Bacardi 151. And it's no longer actually being made. They discontinued it back in 2016, and this review dates back from about 2010. I think it's review number 37. But you have to understand what the world was like back then, before all of the independent bottlers started to give you these incredibly strong rums. Now, if you were a fan of the site, you'll know that I have this list called which was originally called the 10 strongest rums in the world. But back then, there only really were 10 or 20, rums that really were worthy of the name. But now that list is like 30, 35 rums long, that is over 70%. So the 151s, which have a very interesting history all over on their own, aren't really as unique as they once used to be. And I mean, there's rums, I've tasted rums that are north of 80% on almost a regular basis these days. But it's worth taking a look at this thing, the Bacardi 151, right? And that's because for a long time it really was almost a standard. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I have an entire article devoted to nothing but the history of the 151s with a very long list at the end of it. But there's something about this that really just has a cachet all of its own. And it's almost like when Bacardi made it, and that goes back a fair ways, I think it goes back even to the 1940s, it was one of the strongest rums ever made and was made to be a cocktail ingredient, particularly for Vic Bergeron's Trader Vic's business in California back in the day, and all those tiki bars that came up in the 40s and 50s. But by the time I got around to tasting this thing, it simply was the strongest rum I'd ever tried in my life. I mean, 75.5%. Jesus, that's huge. And you just get the impression, or at least that the way I wrote it, it was so unusual and so strong that you almost feel that Bacardi just stroked their mustaches and decided that they were going to create something that just had no truck with any kind of pansy nonsense at 40%, and 0 to drunk arrives from 2.5 seconds. That's really what the rum was. And it really is a really quite incredible dram. And I actually have a thing of it here, right? And I've had this standing now for about a couple of hours. And Jesus, is that strong? Holy crap, that is strong. It really is kind of nasty because it has this really thin, rubberized ethanol kind of fumes. And believe me, I've tasted one that's 90% from Suriname, so I know that this isn't the best you can get or the strongest you can get. But even so, for 75%, this thing really is rather uncouth, and it really doesn't like you, and it's going to rip your face off every chance it gets. I wrote back in the day that you could make your will and you could kind of like just kiss your significant other tenderly one last time before you go to battle with this thing. And that's probably not too far from the truth. I mean, it really is, it's not a still strength from the way L'Esprit did, where they did a couple of 80%ers that were white. This thing has actually been aged for a couple of years, and then filtered a little bit to remove some impurities. But the truth is, it really doesn't matter how long these people age it. Bacardi could age this thing for any length of time and it wouldn't matter. I could put this in my son's potty with a diaper floating in it, I said, and the next morning both the diaper and the potty would be gone. It's really that fierce and that uncouth, and it doesn't really like you. But even so, people bought it for decades. It was one of the best-selling rums of its kind. It used to make B-52s and floats and so on, so it was really part of the cocktail circuit. No sane person would drink this shit. I mean, who would do that? But what happened was that after a while, Bacardi started to get a whole raft of lawsuits because it really is rather inflammable. And actually, they clear advisories on this thing. Where do I see it? It's down to the back. Okay, warning label, flammable liquid, and all kinds of things. Like don't fart and drink this thing with good reason, because if you fart and you have a cigarette in your hand, it's just like you might just explode into an amoebic mess. It really has a few tastes. Those are primarily a little bit of molasses, a little bit of brown sugar, some toffee, all the usual stuff that you would get from a barrel. Nothing particularly substantial here, and it's not meant for that. You're not going to get anything like that. Don't expect it. It's just a strong thing for a B-52 or a float of some kind or something, just to light up or to show your friends that you're a toughie. I drink this shit. Not really much point to it, really. But be that as it may, they discontinued it in 2016, leading to a whole shitload of posts on social media and on various websites by various man-children who decided they wanted to talk about their episodes in university or wherever where they got drunk on it for the first time. You don't get it anymore. If you can, you would get it for nostalgia value. I think it's worth a flutter. You could still get 151s from other companies around the place. But in terms of its history and in terms of how long it lasted and the fact that it's not being made now, if you can get it, just get one. It really is kind of neat, and you can at least have some points given by people because you've got an interesting rum that's really quite strong on your shelf. So that's it for now, and I hope you like it and enjoy. Bye-bye.